Hi, it's Martha Stewart. You know, I spend a lot of time thinking about dirt. At 3 a.m., at all hours of the day, really. What people don't know is that not all dirt is the same. You need dirt with the right kind of nutrients. New Miracle Grow organic raised bed and garden soil is so dense, so full of nutrient-rich, high-quality ingredients. Miracle Grow is simply the best.
This episode of the D-Lew Podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lew Podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. This podcast is a Believe Network and Siete production. Welcome to another edition of the D-Lew Podcast, brought to you by Believe Network. I'm your host, Derrick T. Lewis, and wow, this past weekend I had such a blast working at the world-famous Monster Factory and getting to see all the boys and girls again. You know, now we're back to doing one show a month, so there's like a huge gap between the time that I see the wrestlers versus last year when we were doing shows twice a month. So I felt like I was there all the time, but it was definitely great to see, you know, Dan, Missy, and everybody, you know, at the factory. And we put on an incredible matinee show. I think we had a 2 o'clock start. And, you know, we really, really put on a great show. And our next show is going to be on August 12th. So you'll be seeing me plug that, you know, within the next couple of weeks or so. But speaking of the Monster Factory, my guest this week is one of the premier managers in the wrestling business. He's a guy that I've known, you know, since I got started in the wrestling business almost 5 years ago. Benjamin King. The guy is no nonsense. You know, his character is very, you know, if I could say kingpin type of character, but you know, he's very, very serious, but he loves what he does. He loves his wrestling business, and you know, he agreed to come on to the D-Lew Podcast, no questions asked. And again, it was an honor for me, you know, to have him on when we could shoot the breeze about, you know, his life, you know, his upbringing, so to speak, you know, how he got into wrestling as a fan, and ultimately how he got into the wrestling business. So let's not wait any longer. My interview with the one and only Benjamin King starts right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you one of the most premier managers on the independent wrestling scene right now. I have an opportunity to work with him on many occasions at the world famous Monster Factory. I give you the one and only Benjamin King. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, Derrick. I appreciate you having me today. I know it's been a little while since I've gotten to talk, so it's nice to have a moment.
Absolutely, man. Well, again, I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come onto the show. So let's talk. Every story has its beginning, obviously. Let's talk about young King. Let's talk about life growing up in South Jersey. So what was life like for you growing up in South Jersey?
It was rough in a weird way, because like my family, we didn't struggle, but we still had our ups, we still had our hills to climb.
Mm-hmm.
My mom had me when she was really young, so it's one of those things where I grew up with a teen mom who was trying to figure everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the time when I was born in Willingboro, so it was kind of like Camden Light, where it was just like it wasn't as bad, but it still had its areas you wanted to avoid. But it was a nice childhood. My grandparents were really good to me. My family was just really accepting of me. But I always, I'll be honest, man, I struggled with relationships growing up because like it was one of those things where it's like everybody was friendly, but I just never really could like connect with anybody on a deep level. So I was like
Mhm.
really reserved as a kid. It probably wasn't until like I was like 6 or 7 that I really started branching out, started making friends, and really making those bonds. And yeah, and then life happens, man. You start experiencing those life events from trauma to good things. A lot of ups and downs, man. A lot of struggles, but they molded me to the man I am today. So I'll
Yeah,
give
I
it
was going
that.
to talk about that too in regards to childhood. Now, you say you obviously you had some struggles in regards to opening up, when you're much younger than obviously 6 or 7, you're starting to open up just a little bit. So with childhood, what was that like going into your early teens and things like that? Was there athletics involved? Was there, sports or anything like that was for school? What was that like for you?
So it's funny, like throughout my childhood, my mom, she saw me, and you've seen me, man. I'm built like an athlete. My
Hmm.
body is the size for an athlete, but like I was always the athlete with an artist's heart. Like I just always had the creative mindset of poetry, writing, public speaking. I was always good at the artistic sides of life.
Hmm.
Don't ask me ever to draw anything because I can't draw for nothing. But like everything else, man, I just really enjoyed. But with that said, my mother got me playing everything from baseball to football. She wanted me to play soccer. She wanted me to do everything. And the only sport that really stuck was actually football. And I played that throughout a little bit of high school. And then the one sport that I really wanted to do was amateur wrestling.
Okay.
But where I was moved to, they took amateur wrestling away just a few years prior because not enough people were signing up for it.
Oh man, that stinks.
These things happen.
Right, right, right.
It was funny because like I was into pro wrestling, but I wasn't really into it at the time of me moving. And it was like amateur wrestling just seemed the one thing I would love to do because I love to grapple. I love to pick up. I like to put down. That's what I do. And like just the whole flow of Greco-Roman was just like something that I really enjoyed watching. I like watching it today.
Yeah,
Uh
it's interesting to see, and I watch, there's a lot of times I'll watch like NCAA wrestling a lot of times when they have like their tournaments and everything, and it's just amazing, regardless of weight class, like just how naturally strong those guys are. You know what I mean? The time they put in, on the mat and honing their craft, as an amateur athlete, it's amazing to me. It's funny, I actually interviewed the Alpha Academy during WrestleMania week, and I was asking Chad Gable, and we're him and Otis as far as their transition from amateur wrestling to pro wrestling. And they said there's a lot of similarities to it in regards to physicality and everything, just being the punishment on your body, that you go through. So it's amazing, and you wonder why guys like Kurt Angle, took to pro wrestling like fish to water. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
man.
for
It's
sure.
it, it's really crazy uh that I like when you look at it, you see people who do these other sports now starting to flow themselves into professional wrestling. And it's almost like it's funny, like we all know like professional wrestling is an organization that's there to tell a story. And it's athletes who are artistic enough to be able to tell that story. Uh but when it comes down to it, man, like I see guys like Moose over an Impact. Like when he first showed up, I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in the character, but then like it's kind of like they let the reins off of him a little bit and let him just kind of do his thing, and it became fire. And like
Mhm.
you got your Brock Lesnar's, your Shayna Baszler's coming from a fighting background going into this, and just naturally good.
Right.
Uh, what shocks me the most are the celebrities that are starting to show up in the business. Like, because back when I was watching it as a kid, when I was my son's age, we had people like Jim Carrey, not Jim Carrey, Drew Carey showing up at the Royal Rumble throwing money at Kane, and like that was our our celebrity spot, but now we have Ricochet and Logan Paul. We have like these celebrities that are coming in.
Bad Bunny, yeah.
Bad Bunny, hands down, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest stole that show.
Or at WrestleMania. Oh, well, this past Backlash. Yeah.
Backlash, that's what it was.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
They took that show. And like, when it comes down to it, like, people always say, like, these guys are just part-timers, but it's like, yo, these guys are showing up, they're putting in the work, and they're actually outperforming some of the people that I see on a weekly basis with how much it is. Now, mind you, they don't have to do matches and stuff like that throughout the week at house shows and stuff like that. But like, these guys, you got to accept them as a part of the family now. Like, they really do put in the work where they put on 10, 15-minute matches.
Yeah. No, let's back it up a little bit though. So when was your first exposure to pro wrestling? Like, when was it that you really just sat down? I was like, yo, dude, I think this is like the coolest thing on TV. What was your first exposure? What was the promotion? And what were some of the wrestlers that you actually saw for the very first time?
So my very first exposure to pro wrestling was WWF.
Okay.
I was channel flipping with my grandfather, and I saw the very end of a Too Cool match. And I saw Sky Too Hotty and Grandmaster Sexy and Rikishi doing that dance.
Right.
Their iconic dance. And it was just like, what is this? So I ended up watching the rest of the show. And on that show, I saw like Stone Cold, and he's rivaling against, I want to say it was Bret Hart at the time, but I'm not 100% certain around that. But like, it was just like that during that time, I was just watching and I was like, this is interesting. And my grandfather starts telling me about how he grew up watching Andre the Giant, Roddy Piper. And I was like, I don't know who these people are. And he goes, well, let's watch some old shows. And he pulled out some VHS tapes and stuff, and we watched it. But like, to this day, Scotty Too Hotty is what brought me into professional wrestling. Like,
shout out to Scott Taylor.
Yeah, man. He brought me into the business. For a man who cannot dance such as myself, it was fun watching them just have a good time when they're out there. And it was just always a nice time to watch Too Cool appear. And like, that branched off to Rikishi. And then from them, I started really getting into Edge and Christian. And obviously, there's nobody on the planet that doesn't love the Hardy Boys. Like, I started really getting into tag team wrestling. But the one thing that exposed me, that really brought me to love the business, wasn't even in the WWF. It was in WCW with NWO.
Okay.
And like, as you know, like, I'm a man of factions, everything from the Proud to the Division. I just love the idea of having a power unit be that either force that goes up against the force of evil, or the force of evil trying to run the business. Because professional wrestling is just heroes and villains, man. Like, as we know, there's the good guys and there's the bad guys. And then you have your anti-heroes and your anti-villains. And it's like, when you look at it this way, you can see why kids love this so much. And as adults, we grew up as children wanting to be those superheroes. As adults, we are those superheroes, and we portray those supervillains that make the heroes even more grand. So like, it's really dope to see what we saw as children, when it seems like Stone Cold Steve Austin is flipping off Vince McMahon, and he is just running hell throughout the entire company, only to know that he and Vince are actually perfectly fine behind the scenes. They're actually pretty close friends. It's like, I love that story, that they can be able to just, when I clock in, you're my enemy, and then afterwards it's like, hey, you want to go get a beer?
Right.
And it's like, as a child growing up, going into the business, not going in, but like becoming a fan of the business, it is such a nice feeling of seeing what it was as a child and seeing what it is as an adult, because the child in me is still a fan of the business.
I agree. I totally agree with you 100% on that. Now, when was the first time you ever saw it live? Like, as far as first live event that you went to, you know, regardless of what age was it, when was that first live event, and what was that experience like for you?
So My first live event was a house show. No, it was a Monday Night Raw. Uh, I don't remember what age I was, but I remember my aunts taking me and my younger brother at the time,
Hmm.
and it was in Philly. And I don't remember a lot, but I remember it was at the time that Raven and RVD and them were in there. So I'm gonna guess it was around the ECW time.
Hmm.
Um, but I still remember it was during the time of Undertaker, Biker Taker.
Hmm.
Um, so like I just still remember the matches of like the Hardys were facing up against it was like Balls Mahoney and somebody else, I want to say. Like it was just like I can't remember the whole show. Like my memory is it okay if I curse in this show?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. I just like to be professional about it, but my memory is shit, man.
I hear
like
you.
like when I go out there to cut promos and stuff, I love it because like I've had this happen a few times. I'll go out into a show and I'll cut a promo, and a fan or somebody will be like, "Yo, that was awesome," and gives me a little fist bump. Hell, you've done it yourself, or like good stuff. And if anybody asked me what I said, I would just Pete Dunne shrug and just go, I don't know. It's my memory's so bad. Like as soon as I speak it all out, that I hope somebody recorded it because there is no second take.
Right, right, right. So you basically you're saying that it was you want to say early 2000s when you first saw your very first live event, and obviously the live event feeling versus watching it at home are two totally different dynamics.
100%. At home, it's like you're watching a movie.
Hmm.
When you're there, it's like watching a sporting event. Because don't get me wrong, like when the Super Bowl's on, no matter if you're there or when you're home, it's exciting. But when
Hmm.
you're there and you can hear it, you can hear the people, you can hear the athletes, you can feel the energy in the air. When the hair on your arms and back of your neck are standing up, when you hear Cody Rhodes music kick on, when you hear the choir of Seth Rollins music kicks in,
Hmm.
it is just an element unlike anything.
Dude, I can remember my very first live event that was the Survivor Series 96 at Madison Square Garden. To this day, I can still hear Howard Finkel say, "Good evening, New York City, Madison Square Garden, New York City." And that's exactly why I do that at the Monster Factory, because it gives me those same feelings that I had when I was 18 years old, going to my very first live event, which was a pay-per-view, by the way, which
Mm-hmm.
was The Rock's debut. You know what I mean?
Really? Oh
Rocky
yeah, it
Maivia.
was.
It was Rocky Maivia, and I was there for that.
That's
And
fucked up.
I'll never forget how I felt going to my very first live event. And that's my goal, is to make a fan feel that same way if that's their first time coming to the Monster Factory, or if they want to continue to get those feelings when they keep coming back. You know what I mean? So I totally get what you're saying in regards just to the whole live event dynamic. It's incredible to for those that have never been to a live wrestling event. I definitely encourage you to do so. You should definitely come out to a Monster Factory show August 12th. Cheap plug, just saying. Now, when did you know that you wanted to be into the wrestling business?
It's funny when I was a kid. Obviously, I dreamed of the idea. It was always just like, oh man, I would love to be a wrestler. But like as I got older, my family are realists. They are very like you're allowed to dream, but be realistic about it. So like being a dreamer in that environment is very rough. And I love my family. Don't get me wrong; they've helped me to this point. But as a child, dreaming is one of the things that we had, and
Absolutely.
so I never had that encouragement. And it's not like they didn't mean to do it that way, but they never really had the encouragement to go into that line of work. There was also
Right.
another opportunities as a kid at that time to really do it around where I live. Um, which is the reason why like I love that the Monster Factory has that juniors program that my son gets to be a part of,
Oh yeah.
because like when I tell you working with it for that past week, it was just an experience like no other. But what got me into the business was actually back in 2018. I remember lying down with my son. We're watching a Monday Night Raw, and Bobby Lashley comes out through the curtain.
Mhm.
And my son looks at Bobby Lashley on the TV, turns to me and goes, "Dad, is that you?" Now, mind you, I am flattered. I am flattered that my child thinks that I am as ripped and as well shaped as Bobby Lashley. But like I had to break it to him, like, nope, that wasn't me. And he goes, "Well, would you do this?" And I asked him, I was like, "Do you want me to?" He nodded, and next thing I know, I'm on Google looking up pro wrestling schools in the area. Monster Factory had the highest rating, so I reached out the number on the website. Danny reached back and said, "Show up. This is the amount of money you got to pay. Just show up."
You know what? I'm laughing, and I don't mean to. I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's just the fact that everyone has the same Dan story.
Show up.
Shout out to Danny Cage. Shout out to Danny Cage. Love you, buddy.
To Danny, he has it's at this point a catchphrase where he tells you from the moment you start to now, you want to succeed, show up.
Show up. Yeah, literally. That's it.
That's literally the secret to success. It's
show up.
Show up. Now, mind you, I know that like I'm not the perfect one on attendance, but like he knows that if he asks me to do something, or it's like, "Hey, I need you here," or "Hey, can you come here?" I'm going to do everything in my power to show up. And like that's the one of the reasons why I'm plugging the hell out of the factory for this. It is home to me. If I am not in my house working, I want to be at the factory. And being off for the past year, not being able to be there, has driven me mad because now my son's 2K23 game has characters in it just because I had to do something creative.
Right.
And it's just, and like the factory is just like a place where I feel I can, in a weird way, be myself without the pressure anymore.
Right.
So like, but yeah, my son wanted me to get into the wrestling, so I contacted Danny Cage. Danny told me to show up. I came in to kind of take a look around. A month later, I'm wrestling. Well, I'm there training.
Right. And that was gonna be my next question. Was it I guess the dose of reality kick in regards to how much the physicality you have to take in the ring training? How was that like for you?
So like I always had that knowledge that wrestling is rough on the body.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the career length, and even as like a teenager to an adult going into the business, if you look at the career length of majority of these wrestlers,
mm-hmm.
it's not super long. It's not one of those where it's like it's longer nowadays than it was in the past. But
we absolutely.
But like you could tell the toll that it took on the bodies. And I still remember the first day I was in the ring because I was struggling getting rolls down. So they sent me over to learn how to bump. And I still remember it was me, Tyga Watson, Hyena Hex, and Jester all in the ring trying to teach me how to bump. And I took that first bump and it felt like I hit solid ground and all the air stayed up. And Jester just smiles, squats down next to me, goes, "You forgot to breathe, didn't you?" And he did that Jester laugh, and I was like, "Ow." And he goes, "Yeah, now get up and do another." And like, it's like, it was fun because they didn't look at it as you're weak, you can't do this. It was, we could have told you, but you wouldn't have understood it until you did it yourself.
Right.
And from there, now you know the feeling, now you know what to do. And that just seems to be the Monster Factory way. It's like if you make a mistake, you'll be not criticized, but critiqued. But it's all for the learning experience.
Yes, indeed. And even as an announcer, as a ring announcer, is like, granted, I'm not taking bumps and not in there, but Dan, allowed me to sink or swim. And there were some times I would sink and I would fail. You know what I mean? But he would also show me teachable moments about why you're supposed to do this or why you don't do that and why it's important to make sure that you're doing it this way. Mm-hmm. Because he's only trying to show you, because if you get an opportunity to go somewhere else when that company is on national television,
better chance of swimming than sinking.
Absolutely. So that's why Monster Factory is the top rated wrestling school in the world, because the proof's in the pudding. You know what I mean? So I'm glad to
100%.
hear that, your journey in regards to, learning how to, take bumps and everything. Everyone has the same, like, pretty much the similar story in regards to taking that very first bump. It was like, oh man, and you got to do it again and again, and just teaching your body how to withstand a lot of punishment. You know what I mean? So, and I give all the respect, to every person that steps in the ring, to do it. And for people that, if I have people that tell me, man, that stuff is fake, and that you guys things that man is like cottonelle tissue, I'm like, you come on by and you take a bump and you see what it's like, and then say that again. You know what I mean? So a lot of people,
my
they don't
favorite
know.
thing. When people say wrestling is fake, it's like, is it choreographed? To a degree, yeah. But like any event, audibles have to be called. Things happen, and you are risking your body. If you go to that top rope, hell, if you go to that middle rope and you slip, you could break a bone, you can break something, you can hurt somebody, you can hurt yourself.
Right.
It's all a risk. Trying to go for a power bomb, there's a risk. Going for just a suplex alone, there's a risk. And when it comes to the actual matting, it's just like, you guys see the tarp. You don't know what's underneath the canvas.
Steel beams and plywood.
Yep, planks of wood, steel beams, and maybe like what?
An inch of padding,
inch of padding, maybe an inch and a half.
Not much.
Not at all.
No.
But like, when I tell you, man, it's depending on whose ring you're in. There's some rings that I have like fallen, bumped, and it was like I was hitting the ground regardless. Like, it was just so rough. And then there's rings I've fallen in where I'm like, wow, I am falling on clouds. So it's like, but it's not normally the latter.
Wow. Incredible. So when was it that you were when you made that transition to want to becoming a manager? Was it a decision of like, you know what, I think there's a much longer trajectory for being a manager versus being a pro wrestler?
So I got injured back in 2011. I was in a really bad car accident. I ended up tearing my rotator cuff, messing up both my ankles, my knee, and my lower back. And I went through physical therapy, but it wasn't really well put together. So some of the injuries kind of like lingered in the background of my mind. So when I started training, I started having those past injuries resurface. My rotator cuff ended up getting messed up again, and both my Achilles started flaring up, and I was struggling. So I just still remember we goofed around. I was told I was really good at promo work. So I remember just chilling with Hyena Hex, and we were going over lockups when Getty Cahoon calls over to me and goes, "Hey, Dan and I want to talk to you." So I go to the back, and there's Danny, there's Getty Cahoon, there's Michelle, there's Carl Martin, and they told me that I am going to be managing Hyena Hex. I'm going to be managing Hyena Hex, Jafar, and Tiger Watson. And they told us the storyline. They told us what was going on, what we're going to have to do. And I'm looking at Hex going, am I supposed to be in here? Because I'm just confused because I've only been in the business for about 6 to 8 months at the time.
Right.
And Dan looks over to Getty, and Getty goes, "Yeah, I think it's a good idea." So they put me into that role, and it was nice because it was like they trusted me in such an important role for their biggest storyline going into the summer of 2018. And I to this day just remember walking out of that meeting going, what the fuck am I going to do now?
Right.
What am I supposed to do? Like,
right.
And I still remember Michelle walks up to me and they go, "You'll be fine. Don't overthink it. Have fun." So started cutting little promos, started doing little things. And then I remember the very first night, man, there's nothing like that first time you walk through and you hear the entrance music that you have.
Oh, for sure.
It is a feeling, man. And I still remember walking through that curtain, looking at Getty in the ring and smiling, and then having Jafar and Tiger running from the back, and everyone starts ganging up on Getty, and we do that historic moment for the Prowl, at least, of when the Prowl took out Unstable to start the whole summer off. And it was just like feeling that change of mentality. When I was behind that curtain, I was Kayshawn Marsh. When I walked through that curtain, I was Benjamin King. And when I walked to the back afterwards, Getty Cahoon comes up to me and gives me a hug, and he goes, "You did awesome." Dan gave me a fist bump. He said, "You did great." And it was just like really, really rewarding. And I think that it was that moment that made me go, this is what I want to do. I would like to wrestle, but being able to be a manager where I am literally a piece on the chessboard that is able to strategically try to take control of everything. And the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I was like, all right, how can I make this character mine? Because you remember the very first insult that I got from a heckling fan was I was a discount Suge Knight.
And I was just about to ask you, talk about the Benjamin King character, the look, the presentation, the idea. Who is Benjamin King? And tell the people and describe the character. This episode of the D-Lew Podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lew Podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW.
Benjamin King, his whole thing is he wants success. He wants the best out of this business that we all love, professional wrestling. So to get the best out of the business, he wants to push the wrestlers, the managers, the owners, the commentary, the announcers. He wants to push them all to their very limit. And at the end of the day, that's where success will come from. Mm-hmm. And he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's not afraid to be known as the devil, as a snake in the grass. He's not afraid to be called untrustworthy. He's not afraid of any of those things, because at the end of the day, his tactics will result in success of one way or another. Mm-hmm. And in the long run, just like me, he does it for the ones he cares for. At the end of the day, if he cares about you, you will do so much, because he will give you everything to succeed. But as soon as you turn away from him, and as soon as you show him that you don't need him, it's kind of like, if you don't take the proper channels, it's kind of like gang warfare, man. Once you're in, you're in, and if you want out, I'll take you out.
Right.
And that's just the Benjamin King mentality, and that's the reason why, like, for me, if you go to the story of Hyena Hex and Benjamin King, it all started with the two of us. He was my golden goose. And it wasn't until he started calling himself the Monster Factory God, mm-hmm. and talking and acting like he was bigger than me, and he started ordering me around. That's where Benjamin King looked, and he goes, "So you think you're above me? So what's a god to a king when the king can make a god fall?" And then there was that moment at in December of 2018 where I ended up pushing Hyena Hex.
One last fight. Yeah.
Yeah. When I pushed him off the ladder.
Yeah.
Because I still remember the very moment he spoke down to me and goes, grab the ladder and help your God. So I grabbed the ladder and I helped myself to reposition myself back at the top by reminding him that there is no God among men. And that's the mentality of Benjamin King. He will put on the suit, but he is not afraid to take the suit off to fight. He's not afraid to talk you to the point where you are going to be the next big thing, or you're barely the dirt underneath his shoe.
Incredible.
Because if you want success, prove it.
There's been managers over the years, and we can go through the history. You could talk about the Grand Wizard of Wrestling, Classy Freddie Blassie, Lou Albano, Gary Hart, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Slick, Mr. Fuji, Jimmy Hart, and of course you have now in the modern day, the wise man himself, Paul Heyman. Of all of those, or maybe some I didn't mention, which of those managers do you study and why?
So there's actually two managers that I actually really hooked myself to. One obviously was Paul Heyman.
Mm-hmm.
I loved how his mind always worked from the time he was the owner of ECW all the way till now as the wise man. The way that he spoke on the microphone and the way that he would make people feel like it's their fault that they failed or their fault that they succeeded, the way that he's able to twist the tale to make it where he is consistently innocent is such a good piece of character that I love that concept, because it's like the ultimate villain. It's like the Kingpin of Marvel, where he's not touchable, and if you touch him, you did something wrong. He never did anything wrong. You did it wrong. But ironically, Paul Heyman wasn't the one that really made me vibe my Benjamin King gimmick. The dude that did it was Montel. It was MVP, man. Him in the Hurt Business. That swagger he had from the moment, like when he first showed up to now, he always had that movement to him, that swagger and that confidence. And it was just like he was the guy that I wanted Benjamin King to live up to. The whole thing was just, he was money, he was power, he was success. And that's what I want. That's what I want my whole thing to become, and be able to back it up behind it.
On that note, though, talk about some of the things that makes a good manager, whether it's a heel or a baby. What are some of the elements that makes that manager stand out, and what makes that manager good?
Patience. Have patience. Patience with the wrestlers, patience with the referees, and also be patient out there when you're managing. Like, it is our job as a manager to make the wrestlers look larger than life. We are a piece of the story. We are not the story. We are like Benjamin King. Doesn't matter what role, doesn't matter who I was managing. He's an important fact. He is somebody that's out there that is making this story larger than life. The story was Hyena Hex and Getty Cahoon. The story was Jafar, and it was Michelle. It was the story of Tiger Watson. It was the story of Travis Jacobs and Notorious Mimi. It was the story of Clutch Adams, and it was just the story was the wrestlers. Benjamin King was there to give them an elevated boost. It was my character that made them be able to draw off of what I'm doing to grow even more. So when I'm out there managing, I'm going to talk talk shit to the crowd. I'm going to say what I need to do, and I'm going to be on the mic, and I'm going to cut these promos. But at the end of the day, when I speak, you will kneel down to your king. That is Benjamin King's ego playing the part. Right. So when Carl Martin comes out of nowhere and hits me with that little ceramic head that he has, it's one of those things where I've been untouchable for 4 months. I finally got hit. That means something. Because now Getty Cahoon and Hyena Hex are the only ones left in that ring. The show is now on them. Because now the snake in the grass, who has been hands-on for the last 3 months, has just been eliminated from the situation.
Right.
So now things are unpredictable. Again, it looked and appeared like Benjamin King was in charge of the whole thing, when really I was just a piece of the story to give Hyena Hex that weaselly heel who's scraping by because somebody constantly has his back. That was the story of Hyena Hex. That's where Hyena Hex's ego came in, because Hyena Hex felt like he was untouchable. And like that's how the story's told. So when it comes to being a manager, as you asked, be patient. Don't try to rush your story. Don't try to rush your character development. Don't try to rush to get matches through. When the wrestlers are going over matches, listen to them. Listen to what they're saying. Listen for spots and ask them, what are the big spots of the match? And what 2 spots in the match am I involved in? Am I going to be doing dirty stuff? Am I going to be used by the heel? Am I going to be the heel? Tell me the big spots so I could be able to help get the crowd built up for that big moment. Give me that information, and that's all you need. And just be patient with it. If you're trying to develop your character and trying to develop the story quickly, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's probably going to end up being a shit story. Because nobody's gotten the opportunity to really understand who the characters are in said story. There's like a love-hate relationship with the build-up. Look at perfect example, which is something that anybody listening here who is a professional wrestling fan is already aware of. The Bloodline storyline. That storyline has lasted what? Almost
it's 3 years. 3 years. August will be 3 years, and I gotta say, it's probably one of the greatest storylines in the last 25 years. In the business. And
think of how it started. Yeah. Roman Reigns came back. He took out Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. That's all he did.
He said, I'm going to wreck everyone and leave.
And that's what he did. And then it was that next night where all you see was Roman Reigns sitting in that seat. And the camera panning out. And then you see Paul Heyman. And that's where everything began. That's where his whole story started. And then 3 years later, you have Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. And it's like, I feel like everybody was in on like, we know how this story should end. But every time you think that the story was going to stop, because we were so conditioned for a title reign to only last a certain amount of time, that it just kept, we're like, he kicked out. What? He won. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's like it kept evolving and evolving. And Paul Heyman, that entire time, has played his role into making Roman Reigns larger than life, to making the Usos larger than life. I'll say this now. People can say otherwise. I like Roman Reigns. I like the Usos. I love them. I love them as a fan of the business, and I respect them as a member of this business. I do not believe without Paul Heyman, the storyline would have never gotten as far as it did.
I can agree with that, because there's a lot of things. If you ever listen to, and shout out to Rick Rubin, he has his own podcast. I forgot the name of it, but you can search for Rick Rubin and you'll find his podcast. But Paul Heyman was on the June 7th episode, I believe. And the episode is about 3.5 hours long. I felt like I went to a professional wrestling college listening to that episode. And when Paul was talking about just how he gets everyone on the same page in regards to ideas and, pitching, and going back and forth and everyone just contributing, you know what I mean, to this whole thing. I mean, hey, people fail to remember Sami Zayn was a huge part of this thing too. I don't even think he was even supposed to have been that long, but
Sammy was basically, I want to say only like 4 to 5 months in the storyline, but he I want to say that. I feel like it might have been a little longer than that, obviously, but it felt like his role really took form for about a 5-6 month period.
Yeah.
But
and that's what I mean. But it just really goes to show you it's a lot of it's the little things. And I was at WrestleMania in LA, and let me tell you, like, everyone had their eyes glued to those 2 main events that involved the bloodline. Yep. That was the weekend. You know what I mean? And I asked you that question in regards to what makes a good manager and everything, because a lot of times people think that, well, the manager's job is just to go out there and yada, yada, antagonize the crowd, blah, blah, whatever. But no, it's just the little things. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. It's the little things. When I first got into the business, I overheard somebody say this one time when it came to a manager. Let's say if a manager was in a tag match, it's a wrestle like a manager, manage like a wrestler.
Yeah.
If you're not in the business, you don't understand that ideology. But if you're in, you totally get it, because it's so true.
Oh, it's like Missy Sampson and Danny always say, you have to be crazy to be in this business.
100%.
Simple as that. I still remember it was, let's see, I'm trying to remember who it was. I want to say it was Ricky. He was doing a seminar thing, like the free Sunday nights, free ring, open ring.
Yeah.
And he goes, you have to be stupid to be in this ring, but it's going to be the most fun you ever have.
Agreed.
And that's and 100%. And like, it's funny, like my son, he just did the juniors camp, and now he's doing the Saturday juniors classes. And man, when I tell you, it's amazing that it's when Dan told him that when you start doing roles all the time, that it becomes like second nature.
Mm-hmm.
I did those roles for about 1.5 years. To this day, if I stumble or if I'm tripping, my forearm goes out like I'm about to do a regal roll.
Right.
Instinctually. Now, I haven't done rolls in 1 year, and I still have that instinct. It's crazy. And like, but yeah, when it comes to managing, we are literally like the safety net for the athletes. If they get lost in something, we can help guide them back. If there needs to be an audible, we can call them back. If there's like, we have to wrap it up, or like I'm paying attention to time to try to say like, hey guys, we got to go home. I'm that extra thing they can lean on while I'm out there. For both sides, for the guy I'm managing or the guy that's crossed the way, I can be that extra word of going, like, hey, remember this is the spot, or hey, which side are you going to be on? And like, I know I'm like revealing a lot about how the business works, but like, I think that to get a better understanding about what we do, you have to pull the curtain back a little more. We're past the age where we can live in that fantasy where it's wrestling's real.
Right.
We're not in that world anymore.
Kayfabe, brother.
Yeah, we don't have that. Like, don't get me wrong. Do I love the idea of kayfabe? Yeah, I love the idea behind it. We're just not in that world anymore.
Right. Agreed.
Too much social media has killed that ability. So now we have to go into a more realistic mindset about it all, where it's like, yeah, wrestling it's choreographed, but so are movies.
Performance art.
Yeah, look at this as a movie. You're
Yes,
going
indeed.
on a Saturday night to watch a 2-hour movie live. That's
Agreed.
all.
Agreed.
Like Undertaker is doing a stand-up show. Like, let's be real. You think back in the 90s, you would ever believe The Undertaker
Heck no.
is doing a stand-up show.
No
Not
way.
even close.
No. No.
Your only thought about The Undertaker, like as a child back then, The Undertaker was like teachers. As soon as the night was over or the day was done, they just kind of shut down like machines, and they won't be back on until later. You forget that they're human beings.
Right. They're larger than life superstars, man.
Yeah.
For sure. Let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
What was the best advice that anyone has given you in the industry?
Carl Martin, Danny Cage, and Missy Sampson. All three of them told me this within a week's time of each other. Pro wrestling will be there. Take care of you. I am somebody who will put his health on the line to give everything to everybody. It's just me as a person. Like, scratch the Benjamin King gimmick for a sec with this. This is just who I am as an individual. I'll go out of my way to make sure everybody's okay. I will do that. And I don't want anything for it.
Right.
I just want to see, I legitimately want to see the success of others. When the Notorious Mimi was signed to NXT for her time there, I was ecstatic to the point where I came back for one show in the middle of some health issues I was going through, just so I can call that match.
Yeah.
Just to be there in that last match before she would go off to NXT, because I had to. That was about a week or two before I had to go into the hospital for a bit. And like, I was struggling, but I had to show up. I will do whatever it takes to see this business succeed. And honestly, man, I lost train of thought of where I was going off because I started really thinking. You ever get those moments where like,
oh yeah,
you emotionally start delving, and then you just forget where you even started off with?
For sure.
So I apologize for that. I forget the question that you asked me there.
No, I was just saying that what was the best advice anyone's giving you? I know you said that wrestling will always be there.
Yeah, it will. I've been gone. So I was gone in November for mental issues. I came back for I think it was just the month of July and February. Right before I ended up having my health crisis that where I almost died. That I had to step away from wrestling completely, and that was in March. And since March, I've gotten messages from Missy. I've gotten messages from fans and wrestlers all saying like, "Hope you're doing well. Can't wait for you to come back." And the feeling of them wanting me back felt really good. But knowing that wrestling was still going to be there for when I'm ready to come back. It didn't matter what, I will always have people there. And that's the part that really gets me the most, is that wrestling, and this is for everybody involved in the business, wrestling will be there. Do not put your health on the line. Do not put your mental health on the line, especially your mental health on the line. If you need to take time away, do it. Go recover with everything you might need to do. Promotions will still continue. Your friends and family that you have made in this business will still be there. We are a family, from the indies running on the street to the big time of AEW and WWE. We are a family. At the end of the day, we are going to take care of each other. That's just how this business is, at least through my view. I think that at the end of the day, we will always be able to lift each other up to be able to survive this. So when Missy and Dan and Carl Martin told me that, I guess that part of it just clung on to me more than anything else in the business village.
Got it. Last question before we get out of here.
Yeah.
You alluded to it that you've been away for a while, and when are your plans to come back, and what do you plan to do when you do indeed come back? What does the Kingpin himself, Benjamin King, have in mind for when he does come back?
We're just back to business, baby. And business never stopped. I took my time away. I got my recovery going. But when I come back, it's like riding a bike, man. The bike was away for the winter. Now it's spring and summertime. The sun's out, and King needs to stretch, get his morning coffee, and then get back to work. And that's just how it's going to be. When that's going to happen, well, that's something that anybody listening here and anybody that has been following me will have to always know. Just pay attention. I'll start dropping signs. I'll start letting people know, but I ain't going to straight up tell y'all, because what kind of surprise would it be if I told you when I'll be back?
Very true. But of course, me being a journalist, I had to ask. But I had to. Yes, I had to ask.
Unfortunately, I gave you a lot of paragraphs on all these questions, but for that last one, man, you can just chalk it up to stay tuned.
All right. Well, where can people find you on social media? YouTube, all of where they can find the one and only Benjamin King. Where can they find you?
All right, so y'all can find me at Benjamin King MF on Twitter, Instagram, or you can find Benjamin King on Facebook. I will be having a YouTube page up hopefully within the next month. And don't be afraid to reach out. And any promoters out there listening in, benjaminmfking@gmail.com. Reach out. I will do whatever you need me to do to put in that work to make your business go and excel to their next levels.
Well, King, like I said, we've known each other for quite a while now, and at least since my tenure at Monster Factory. And again, it's always been a pleasure because you and I, what we do. We go in the locker room and we book the territory. You know what I mean? And we talk about a lot of different ideas, and it's a great creative outlet. For even you to even think of me and say, hey, what do you think of this? What ideas you got for this, that, and the other? And it's like, I say, hey, man, I got this, and this. And it's like, it's great when you get to share those creative ideas, when you definitely have the passion for the business that you and I have, like everybody else. So again, I thank you very much for coming on to the show, and we'll definitely be catching up soon.
100%, man. Until then, I'll see you at the factory.
Take care, man. Well, that does it for this week's edition of the D-Lew Podcast. Once again, I want to thank Benjamin King for coming out to the show to talk about all aspects of his wrestling career, his life, and as always, I wish him all the best. Look forward to him coming back whenever that is, because of course he always is a man full of surprises, so you never know when the Kingpin will show up. That being said, again, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button. As a matter of fact, what you can also do is leave a 5-star review as well, as far as what you enjoyed about the show and everything, and what you heard, and where you feel the show can go. Social media is kicking. I think Twitter is now X, but whatever it is, that, Threads, Instagram, TikTok is at The Real D-Lew. Facebook is Derrick T. Lewis official page. You can hit up my store, shop.derricklewis.com, where you can get some really cool tees and hoodies. And don't forget to pre-save my next single with Angie Stars entitled Espacion. You can go to my bio on any of my social media, and you can actually go to that link, click the link, and you'll see on that page, you'll be able to see the link where you can actually go ahead and pre-save it. So on August 25th at midnight, you'll be able to hear me and Angie Stars do our thing. As a matter of fact, her and I are going to be filming the music video this coming weekend. I cannot wait to see how all of this is going to come to be. I'm looking forward to, creating some memories, for a lot of people, including myself. Well, I got to create some memories for myself, right? Most important. Well, with that being said, I'm going to get out of here, and make sure always, whatever it is that you do in life, always remember to make it count. See you next time.
On this episode of Plant Killers, we'll explore one nation's most notorious fruit and vegetable killer, bad dirt. What makes bad dirt so bad? The answer? The ingredients. But fear not, true crime enthusiasts. This story has a happy ending. New Miracle Grow organic raised bed and garden soil. It's made with quality organic ingredients from upcycled green waste like compost and aged bark. Unlike the other guys who can't say the same. Looks like bad dirt's murdering days are over, thanks to Miracle Grow. Join us next time on Plant Killers.